Hi, friends. Welcome to Enlightened World Network. I'm Dr. Ruth Anderson here with the focus on Lightworkers. Today, it is my extreme honor to introduce to you Ruth Gould Goodman. She came to me through Sherry Myers, and anybody that Sherry Myers brings in is somebody I'm going to hold close to my heart. So, Ruth, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, and I feel the same about Sherry as well.
Yeah, she's a special one. So Ruth created Conscious Body Energetics and La Madre Yoga to assist the return of consciousness back to our body through slow motion breath-aligned dance movement. She's an acupuncturist, a mystic, energy healer, an improvisational storyteller, and author of the Sacred Book of You, Unveiling the Lost Teaching of the Deep Feminine. She uses embodied storytelling to help people steady awareness in the power of the deep feminine, a state of consciousness that stands firmly in the unformed birthing place where infinite possibility distills into present moment physical actualization. Ruth, that's quite a mouthful, and I can't wait to unpack that and hear what all that means, but thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here today. So, Ruth, I know that you work with folks one-on-one. I know that you are an author. You come with such a wealth of wisdom and information. We're going to get into what you're currently doing in a little bit. But first, I want to know, what was it like growing up, Ruth? Were you aware of spirit? Were you aware of a deeper connection? Tell me about you.
What an interesting perspective, my childhood. I grew up in a family that was, my parents were the parents of immigrants and Jewish, and there was a complete rejection of Judaism, and it was atheist. And I was in a family, and I had a very strong sense of spirituality. But every time I spoke about it, my father would get angry at me because I was being spiritual, and he thought that was nonsense. So I had a lot of going upstream to do, but I felt like there was something that I knew, and I was very attracted to things like yoga and dance. And I had a lot of healing to do because the family I grew up in, they loved me, but they didn't know how to love. And so I was very, very fractured and very, very lost and very sad. And, the words depressed might be used. I had to do a lot of healing. I developed bulimia by the time I was 16. And, it was, I was a latchkey kid. I came home and bingo, there was food. Anyway, these things that fractured me have been the terrain of the deep spiritual work that I had to do. And I always say my mother, broke me into 1,000 pieces, but she also gave me the strength to put myself back together again, because she was such a strong intention person. But she didn't, her history didn't teach her how to love her children. So there was a lot of things that were negated about me, but the one thing that I had that was with me my whole life is dance. And for example, when I would be alone, I would go down to the basement and put on these 78 RPM records that my father had of classical music. And I would be in a world where all of my imagination, all of my being was dancing universes, dancing whole scenarios. And in my mind, in my imagination, my body was moving them. And these things, this was something that gave me great pleasure and power and strength, but I had no way of translating it into my world because there was no place to do that. But this work with dance began stayed with me. And there was something that where I went to when I danced that connected me with the all. And I felt power and I felt beauty. And then there was the shattering that I was in when I was when I was in the normal world. And I remember going to parties, and I would be a very kind of like this. I didn't have any person, and music would come on, and all of a sudden I would come alive, and I would be completely committed and in a total dance with God, with everything. And it was as if, all of a sudden the connections were all there. Well, that thread, whatever that was the thread of my healing, because what I began to understand was that there was something my body knew that my intellect did not know. And there were many things that happened through my life. One of them was I went to NYU to study dance therapy, and I got a master's in dance therapy. And I realized there was this knowledge that I had that was just in me about body and emotion and feeling. And I started doing, before, this was in the 1970s. This is a long time ago. And I started doing body work on people and doing emotional work with people. And this was really important for me because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew when I put my hands on people, there were two things that were happening. One was that I knew things and I could help them. And the other was that I was learning about other human beings, because I had been so disconnected that other beings were far away. They were distant. I didn't know how to relate to them. But when I started doing this body work, all of a sudden, they're like me. We're connected. And one person after another, it's like pieces of myself and pieces of myself. And I also began to work with a Sufi master named Adnan Sirhan. And his work was a very physical work. We would do ecstatic dance, trance dance, we did belly dance, we did drumming, we did zikr. And I would find myself, whirling for 4 hours straight. And connecting with the cosmos. I didn't know what was happening. All I knew is that all of a sudden I understood that the whole planet, everything in the universe is spinning towards the heart. It's all spinning towards the heart. And I knew that. I knew it. And I didn't learn this from somebody telling me. I learned it from physical experience. But the thing that I think at some point, because I was very broken. I was bulimic. I was afraid to be alone with myself because I would start eating. But the thing that I began to understand was that my body symptoms, I had body dysmorphia. I hated my body. Even though this dance happened, I wanted to get a knife and cut pieces of myself away because I felt like I was too fat. I was fat and I hated fat. And I realized that all these things were symptoms of a misalignment with my body and a misalignment with my soul. And I had been trying to do all these therapies that were like out there. And I understood that the therapy I needed to do, what I needed to do to heal myself, was to feel where it hurt inside of me. And I understood, oh my God, that's where I'm not loving myself. That's where I learned not to love me. And so I began a process of piece by piece by piece, beginning to take responsibility for all the experiences I had, and not blaming men, not blaming this person, they hurt me, not blaming my mother, not blaming my father, but realizing that there was something that my intention was writing in my body soma that was breaking me and fragmenting me. And I had to learn how to see that moment to moment and rewrite it, because I realized that there were laws that I realized. One was, I realized that the physical universe is not perfect, and that I was taught to be tyrannized by perfection. And I understood, oh my God, I'm tyrannizing myself with a false story, and that everybody, the glass is half empty and the glass is half full. And I have to choose to see myself where I am in all of my fragmentation as perfect. And I began to dance this. And in doing that, I mean, I danced my monsters. I mean, they were like so monstrous, but it was so amazing to start to enter them, because I realized that they were monsters because I was abandoning them. They were abandoned parts of myself. They were denied parts of myself. And so as I danced them and gave them my attention and did not judge them and did not form the story of ugly, the story of the story of ugly. And when I began to just let it be, I watched the energies of my monsters begin to transform. All of a sudden, there would be this evolution that would happen energetically, because we create with our mind. And when we stop being caught in the fear loop, the trauma loop, the old story of the trauma of being told that you're ugly, or that you're not enough, that you're not good enough, and that you don't belong here, and there's no place for you. That trauma loop, if you take your attention off of that and begin to put it through your whole system, our bodies are self-healing organisms. Energy wants to be free. It doesn't like being compressed into a monster. It doesn't want that. So the moment that I began to come into myself and give it full expression and not judge it and just be with it and see what was there, all of a sudden these monsters began to change. And I would find a diva coming through, and this really strong woman, and it would be, I would go, oh my God. And you know what was so amazing? There was one time in a particular class that I was in. This, I wasn't teaching this, that I was connecting with my monsters. And I just kept letting the diva go, and I kept letting the diva go. And all of a sudden, she didn't want to be a diva anymore. And I saw the energy circle back down into the monstrous, chaotic energy again. And I realized that the monster energies are part of a cycle of energy, of the creative process, of the congestion of the emptiness in the birthing process. And I had been caught in a place where I was not allowing my energies to birth into their expression because of all my self-negation. And I began to understand this whole circuitry and began to go into these places. And it was so amazing, because it was like saying a big yes to everything. And I began to have a place in myself to start to explore. For example, there was, I realized at one point, and I know that I did this by tracking the self-hatred I had in my gut. I had all this like, this like ugly. And I said, what is here? What is here? And I began to understand as I let my body go into it. And it was interesting because I took the form and shape of a unformed nervous system. And it was like I was drooling and I was shaking, and I was just hanging with it. And I realized that what was caught there was an infantile nervous system. And what I understood, the insight I had was, this was the, it was a calcification of a state of emergence, it coming out of the emptiness, of the energies of, here's the emptiness, and then there's the birth. And in the family I came in, my parents wanted me to walk before I crawled. They wanted me to fulfill their whatever it was that they were not. They wanted me to be a doctor, an Einstein, a da 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 da. And I was never able to be with emptiness, with my nervous system learning from nothing and beginning to build itself. And I had been taught that emptiness was ugly. Emptiness was a monster. Emptiness was wrong. You have to get A's. You have to you have to perform. You have to da 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 da. And all of a sudden, there's like this insight, and I began to realize that this portal of emptiness is the portal to the divine. That this emptiness is where the interface of my individuality and the vastness of all creation meet. And that this emptiness that I finally was able to hold, and I must have been about 40 when I came to this. I already had 2 kids, and I was a mom, and it's like they were helping me heal. My children were helping me heal, but I understood, and this was the divine feminine, that this womb space, and I realized the whole culture, our whole culture is crazy trying to suppress this empty space and trying to, form everything and control everything, because it has no relationship with this potent womb space of the creative process. And so we are constantly compressing and compressing this, and we make ourselves sick, because this potency, I can tell you that once I began to align with this, my healing started to just come. I began to heal. I began to stop being a fragmented being. And I began to, because I was always having this thread. I was always feeling like people aren't recognizing me. They're not seeing me, because that's what happened in my family. And it was like this process of pulling the threads of myself back, and really taking response and learning how to read the energies of what was happening in my body so that I could create a presence in me and take in another being and see them as them, me as me, and be able to respond with creativity, to realize I didn't have to get stuck in cycles of being hurt or being, not seen, not recognized, because I realized I'm the one who has to recognize me. I have to see God in me. That's what God wants me to do. And that's part of the teaching, was that I understood, was through this work, that the purpose of human purpose is to land in ourselves in 100%, and the body is made is a divine geometry, a sacred vessel that is made by everything that creates everything. It's made by the all. And if I want to know God, if I not want to know what is divine, that come back home, come back to my heart. And also learning how to emanate the heart through the tissue of the body to bring me into a state of love. And then, it's like you see the world through different eyes. And it's what I wanted to say, I didn't finish what I wanted to say, that I realized in tracking my need for recognition. I went through this fun thing. This is the kind of thing I put some of the people I work with, was, okay, so you want to be recognized, so become what you want to be recognized. So I did these ballets and in my imagination, and I became this diva singing, and I was talking to people, thousands of people in front of an audience. And that wasn't it. Well, what is this thing of recognition? And I went in, and I realized that need for recognition is much more ancient than me. Well, how ancient is it? And I kept going back and back. And all of a sudden, I was going back to the beginning of creation. And I said, oh my God, we were created because the divine wanted a universe that could reflect itself back to itself. Wants a universe that can see it. It wants to be seen by itself, but it can only see itself. And so the purpose of human beings here with, and we've lost our way, is to come home to this divinity that we are, so that we can look out of our eyes and see divinity everywhere. Because everything, there's nothing but the divine. That's all there is. There's nothing else. There are, and all the darkness and all the pain is the sacred text of how to find your way back to understanding your own, the power of your own will, mind, intention, attention, to begin to be able to be self-directed and autonomous and sovereign, to be able to claim this divinity and actualize it in the present moment. So, all these things are happening to me. Meanwhile, I'm getting an acupuncture license, and I've been doing body work on people, and I have this gift. I don't know where it came from, but I would put my hands on people, and at first I would say, does this mean anything to you? I was just like, okay, because I was doing this before all this stuff was became occurrence. You have to understand, this was like, it was not in the culture. And I was becoming I got my license in 1984. It was like way before. And all this body work that I was doing was way before. And so I go, and I was learning as I was going, and I would hear something or receive something from them. And after a while, I began to realize that there was an attunement of our energies, and that I was capable of reflecting back to them what their soul needed to hear. And it's not a big deal. It's like, it's resonance. It's like, if we get quiet enough, that something happens in the field. We self-heal each other. If we're clear, we heal each other. This is what we do. Our energies try to find harmony. This is what happens. It's not, I don't heal anybody. They heal themselves, but they receive the information from what is different from my field about their field, to begin to get new information to start the activation of the capacity to heal. So if I hold a coherent and whole field for somebody, that their energy field is going to begin a healing process. And I do a lot of it through touch and through a kind of, because I really believe people need to be touched. And I have very, very deeply conscious touch. And when I touch somebody, I'm feeling their whole body. It's like, it's not just that place. And I realize that, you can heal the body by touching any part of the body if you're really touching. And I feel like we're all hung up on techniques and names of things and whatnot, but it's actually, it reduces down to very, very essential energetics. Am I talking too much?
No. I'm just going right along there with you.
Okay. And so there's it's like, once we get out of the way of ourselves, we realize there's nothing to be healed, and there's nowhere to go and nothing to do except for land in ourselves and allow ourselves to be who we came here to be. And this takes a lot of work, because there's a lot of, I'll call it bullshit in our education. And there's a lot of, competition and greed and trying to get to the top. And, it doesn't understand that we're an ocean of love in an ocean of love. It doesn't understand that. And that this love is abundant and clear. And wants things to thrive, wants everything to thrive, and there's enough, and there's enough, and there's enough. And how we're creating our world, it's a world of war, and it's a world of sickness. And it's about making money, and money becomes God. And it's like, I don't understand this. It's I don't know how people have been caught in this, because they're not happy. They're not happy, and they keep doing the same things, trying to get answers from making more money, or becoming more powerful, and they forget about their hearts, and they forget about their they forget to love themselves. It's funny, because when I work with people, the hardest thing for them to do is to love themselves. They'll love anything, but love their body, love their, who they are. It doesn't matter where you are. It's an act of understanding who you really are, to love yourself.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Ruth. So I do have a question for you. So
Yes.
Folks can work with you in person. Can they also work with you virtually?
Yes, I love doing Zoom. I've been a kind of I was a little shy with Zoom, because I'm so used to doing real energetics, and I didn't realize how much the transmission of energy can happen through Zoom. And it's not transmission of energy. It is, because what goes on is that I'm working with somebody, and I'm saying something, and all of a sudden I'll feel the shifts they're making in their body. And so what I like to do, I don't like to heal people. I like to give them the reflection about what they are doing, to help them understand how precisely they have to watch their thoughts and move their mind to actually create the wholeness that they're seeking, create the self-love that they're seeking. Because I don't believe that anybody can heal anybody. I feel like that's a misnomer, because what we have to do is know ourselves, understand ourselves to heal ourselves, because that's why we are sick. That's the information that we need to heal ourselves. And the information is multidimensional. Sometimes it's about food, sometimes it's about exercise, sometimes, but more, about 80% of it, I think, is how we use our intention and attention. And so learning how to breathe ourselves back, and breathing is a big part of this, because so many of the patterns that we have that are dysfunctional are encoded in the way we breathe. So I do a lot of work with breathing, and I have a lot of techniques that I've developed, and whole classes that I've been teaching, but I'm not teaching them now. But if anybody gets on my mailing list when I do teach it, I will let them know. But I've developed, because of my relationship with my body guides me. I start working, and all of a sudden I'm developing new techniques, and it's coming from my body, and I'm finding myself deepen and deepen and deepen, because I'm being taught, and I'm being taught by my body that is connected beyond my body to something else. So yeah.
Wow, Ruth, you have covered a lot of ground here in a beautiful way. And your initial comment, excuse me, if my family didn't know how to love me, and look at all of the pain and all of the learning and all of the healing that you have gone through, that you're now turning and helping other people to go through their own learning and healing. It's truly beautiful. So thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. So if folks want to know how to connect with you, or if they want to get on your mailing list, how do they find you? How do they connect with you?
Okay, I am somebody, I'm much older than I look, and I have had a resistance to the internet and to social media. So it's a very narrow realm that I am. I have my Gmail, and I do listen to that. And my name is Ruth Gould Goodman at Gmail, RuthGould at Gmail. And that's one of the ways. And I have not been using Facebook. I've been very wary of it, and I seem to have had a good reason to be wary of it. And I'm wary of a lot of social media. So that's one of the ways. And when I work with people, I often get paid by Venmo, but if they get in touch with me, I will, if we work together, they can pay me through that. And they can also, I don't know if it's right to give out my phone number.
I wouldn't. I think if folks want to reach you, they can go to Ruth Gould Goodman at gmail.com. I think that's perfect.
That's the way. I also have a website, and if they want to read about me, and that's Conscious Body Energetics. And but I think that if they want to get in touch with me, please use the Gmail. Also, if they want one of my books, if they ask me for it, I'll give them the mailing address and the Venmo and all of that.
Okay. And you remind me the name of your book, please.
It's The Sacred Book of You, and the U is spelled like a chalice, U, Unveiling the Lost Teachings of the Deep Feminine. And that title comes, when I wrote that book, that was around the time that I made had the insight about emptiness being the chalice, being the place where the divine is able to come through us, and the realization that the culture that we're in does everything in its power to shut our relationship with that emptiness down.
Yes, absolutely. I understand all of that. And truly, we don't do our biggest learnings when life is going well. It's when we're hitting those rough spots that we stand back and go, oh, now I understand.
Always growing. You can't hold on to anything. I've always had trouble, naming what I do, because it's changed. And it's changed again, and it's changed again. So you have to really be in the river. It's a river, and sometimes the river is moving fast.
Yeah. And sometimes it's feeling very stagnant, whether it is or whether it isn't.
Yes.
So, Ruth, thank you so very much for being here today. My hope is that we will see more and more of you on Enlightened World Network. And
thank you.
I'm personally looking forward to getting to know you much better.
So, Ruth, another Ruth. Thank you so much. And it's been my pleasure to get to know you and to experience you. And I hope that I get to see you again and be with you again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Friends, thank you for being here at Enlightened World Network. We have so many interesting light workers, different shows on YouTube and on Facebook. You can easily go to YouTube, type in Enlightened World Network, and you can also then in our search bar, type in Focus on Lightworkers, and there's so many fabulous people highlighted on there. Thank you for being here. Take good care, and God bless.